Hi, I'm Carl and thanks for checking out my video to my electric bike project that I'm naming Turtle. I live about 15 miles from the nearest town, where the post office, gas station, and civilized people live. In April, I sold my truck, leaving a broken down motorcycle and a couple of bicycles. What you're about to see is my attempt at building an off-grid DIY survival quadricycle, a pedal-powered microcar with electric solar assist. I did a little research, but my way is most likely not the best way to do this. Once a week, I ride a bicycle into town to check mail and packages. I like bike riding, so I'm kind of looking forward to trying this out. That's the plan anyway. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe if you're interested.
Holy crap.
Hello and welcome to the new DIY Delta Trike project that I'm calling Recon. This is a work in progress. My goal is to make a Delta-style recumbent trike. That means there's one wheel in the front and two wheels in the back. Recumbent just means that you're leaning back instead of sitting upright. Alright, welcome back. I'm going to read this time because in the video I did about a 30-minute explanation that I think we can do in 30 seconds, so just bear with me here. A potentiometer is basically a volume knob, like on your stereo. So is a throttle on an electric bike. It works by varying a voltage signal, usually between 0 and 5 volts. Then, the motor controller takes that signal and actually changes the motor speed. I am using this to more finely control the speed. Also, a potentiometer is not spring-loaded, so it stays set wherever you leave it. The reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to match my pedal speed to the electric motor speed at whatever gear set that I'm in. On my regular electric bike, I have a cruise control setting that will hold whatever speed you're going until you hit the throttle again or until you hit the brakes. So once I've got the throttle set, I'm able to then find a pedal cadence that will match that. What I'm finding on the trike, the twist grip, it has a very narrow band. So you have very small increments. I mean, it's like you move it a little bit and it lurches. Okay. The potentiometer lets me dial it like 180 degrees, and on the twist grip it's like 45 degrees or something like that. So I have a lot more control with the potentiometer. So that's what we're going to be testing on this episode. Alright, just wanted to get that straight because otherwise it's really confusing what I was trying to say. On with the show. So the first thing I wanted to test before I start mucking around with everything is just make sure everything works first. Alright, so battery's on. This is the battery I tested a couple days ago. So it's not fully charged, but it should be plenty for what we're doing. So we'll go master on. And we'll just hit the throttle, make sure the wheel spins, and also that it doesn't go running through the house on me. Good. Okay, so that's just to make sure it works. This is something I didn't learn for a long time, but what you can do, if you're careful, gently strip the wire. It'll just push the insulation back and not break the wire. So that's the first trick. So if you can separate the insulation by a 1/4 inch would be plenty. And then you take your little jumper leads, and then I can clip it onto the wire and clip the other end onto my multimeter. The blue wire, the third wire, should be somewhere between maximum and ground. I'm going to say somewhere between 0 and 5 volts. So then what I want to do is start to map it out. And so what I'm probably going to do is put a piece of tape on the throttle and then make marks on it. So where's maximum, where's minimum, and then I can start to write down voltages at each setting.
say for instance, if I decide that half throttle is a good comfortable speed and I could pedal that fast, okay, how many volts is half throttle? Write that down. Then when we come back, we just say, okay, let's make a, what if I could just hit a button that says half throttle? So it's kind of like your cruise control. I'm looking at doing that. Sometimes it's tricky, especially on a bumpy road, to gently move the throttle up or down just a little bit, because you're bouncing and you're hanging onto the throttle, so it's really hard to hold the throttle steady. And then the other one, maybe I could have 2 or 3 preset speeds. So like for instance, the motor is capable of 750 watts according to the label. What I've been doing on the other bike, most days, if it's not too windy, I'll just set my motor at 100 watts, and we'll just ride along at 100 watts so that my battery lasts longer. So if I could have 3 presets, low, medium, and high, and then what if I could go in and change that setting in software? So when I hit medium, that's a nice happy speed. We'll kind of offset these so they don't hit each other. Maybe I'll do this again with a close-up later. Good, we didn't break any wires. This kind of strippers works really good for that. These are vice grip round, not sponsored. I just happened to. I don't remember. There's a lot of tools that I'll see somebody else using on YouTube videos, and you look at it, it's like, oh, that looks a whole lot better than the one I got. So, when you got a little bit extra money, you go buy it. Regularly, I spend food money on tools. So, if you got the right stuff, life is a lot easier. All right. And this is low voltage, so I'm not going to die if I touch the wire. It's not going to kill me. All right. Black and red, 4.37 volts. Okay, it's less than 5, but that's what we'd expect. I'm going to start writing this stuff down. And then we should be able to touch it on the blue, and we should see 0. We actually have a little bit. It's, okay, 0.8 volts. Okay, so that's 0 throttle. Okay, so it's not actually a 0. It's less than 1 though, and that's what I remember on the Giant, or I should say on the bike is from Giant, but the electrics are from Psychoanalyst Green Cycles up in Canada, in Vancouver, I think. Throttle won't start working until it gets above 1 volt. So from 0 to 1 volt, nothing happens. Okay. All right. So then we start twisting the throttle. It changes. It's slowly creeping up, and I expect it to start working when it hits about 1 volt. 0.9. 1 volt. Okay, 1.2 is where it started. 1.2, it's just a slow creep. 1.1, it's still creeping. Pretty slow. So let's say about 1.1 it starts to creep. Alright. I think for me, it took me a long time in my life to understand how this stuff kind of worked. And then once you start to learn it, then I could start having fun. Because it's like anything else. It's like a language, right? Once you understand what people are talking about, in the beginning I remember, people talking about, like in electronics, they talk digital as high and low. Well, what does that mean? Well, literally, it's got either it has voltage or it doesn't have voltage. That could be 3 volts, 5 volts, 2 volts, whatever. 5 is common, 3.3 is common. Okay, so that's 0. That's what the 0 throttle looks like on here. So if we slowly come back, that'll start to change. When we get to about 1.1, it'll start going. Should be about there. I'm actually seeing the change is starting to twitch. There we go. Okay, so that's slow. 1.1, 1 point. Okay, it's still moving. Probably hear it moving. Okay, let go, it stops. Now if I just go faster, is out of balance. It's shaking things a little bit. Okay, so I saw 3.5 or 3.6, I think. Okay, 3.6 is full. Okay. So that's not even getting to 5 volts. Put a couple pieces of tape on the throttle. What I'm going to do first is figure out where maximum is. And then I'll make a mark. And I'm trying to look at them straight on. And you don't move very much, it's like less than a quarter of a turn. And then we move this much and we don't even get anything. So there's 1.1 right there. Okay. Okay. This will be way easier to do in software. I can totally see using like a laptop or something to tune this. Like not when you're driving, but just once I got this hooked up to the Arduino, I should be able to just sit there and enter numbers in from a keyboard using the serial command, serial console. Yeah, that'll be easy. So I think that's how we're going to test it actually. Once we get this hooked up to the Arduino, just hook it up to a USB cable, run it with the computer, come up with numbers I want, and then come back and do it. This is interesting. Let me shut this off. So, yep, okay. So that's off. So yeah, it's like, okay, you move this far, and then it starts creeping. So you got this much. And that's a quarter of the whole throttle range, because you go from here to here is full, but we're going just about full throttle here, and we're getting like from here to here is about minimum to maximum, and then you have a little bit extra up here, but it doesn't do much more. All right, that explains a lot. That's why I'm having such a hard time when I'm riding trying to get a very precise throttle setting, because I was trying to go a certain speed and match it to pedaling, and I couldn't get anywhere close. Like I was always going too fast or too slow, too fast or too slow. Well, now I understand why. So yeah, which wires are which, I know what the voltages are, it matches what I expected. 4.37, that's a little bit low from 5, but it's not too bad. That won't be a problem at all. But it's interesting. Oh, that's my multimeter. It's been on for too long. Okay, shut that off. It's interesting that it's such a narrow band of what we actually use. So this is what I had for a potentiometer. This one rotates. almost all the way around, more than 3/4 or so. Okay, so that'll give us, instead of turning a little bit for the throttle, we'd have a lot of fine tuning. Okay. So what I'll probably end up doing later is putting some kind of a switch or something that I can flip between one and the other or something. All right. Also, this one has 6 wires instead of 3, or 6 connectors. I think this is a stereo potentiometer. It's labeled as a 10K, 10,000 resistance ohms, I think. I'm not the electronics guy. I know enough to Google stuff and find it. So the way I'm gonna try to wire this first, I think the 2 outer pins are the positive and negative, and they can be either way. There's probably a set way to do it, but if you did it backwards, it would still quote unquote work. The middle is the wiper, the one that goes back and forth, that measures the distance. It's that voltage divider thing again. Okay. If you get it backwards, then we'd end up with where we think is minimum throttle would be maximum, and then it would be the opposite the other way. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll use the jumpers again. Okay, if I twist the knob, that number will change, but I'm not sure if it's actually showing it. It does seem to work though. Okay. Okay, so that's about the same. We've got about 1/4 of a turn before anything happens. So that's about the same. Hold this down here. Oh, this will be good. I got a lot of fine tuning here. I went past the maximum and it stops again. How funny. Okay, so there's a maximum and then it actually stops again. It went out of range and you have to go back to 0 to reset it. Okay, so maybe this isn't exactly the same voltage range or resistance range as the one that's on here, but it does work. If I learned a little bit more about this, I could probably fine-tune the settings with a resistor to give it a different range. Okay, so I can get down into a slow creep. What I'm looking to do with this, if I could have, like, make myself a little dial around here and twist it to 4, then that 4 will always be the same. Okay, if I switch these, okay, this, I mentioned this before, this potentiometer I think is a stereo one. If that's the case, what usually happens is when I turn one up, it's actually reversing the opposite side. So the second set of leads I could probably do, instead of it being red, yellow, black, I could do red, yellow, black in the opposite order. As I went up on one, it would go down on the other. What that means is if I didn't like, you know, in this case, turning clockwise looking at the dial makes it go faster. Alright. If I switch the leads, I could go counterclockwise to go faster. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Alright, so now that I've figured out which one, I'm going to draw my little map of this. So if I look at it from the back, it's going to be red, positive, signal, and black negative on the ones closest to me. Alright, so I'm going to make a note of that, and then I can disconnect it, and I'll solder the leads onto that, and then if I wanted to use it, I could, right now I just unplug the throttle and plug this in instead, and it'll work. This area here, I don't know if that's even in the shot, I've got an area kind of between my knees that's going to be a natural place to put things. So, you know, if I put a phone holder there, I can use the phone for the GPS. I use that on the last ride to figure out how fast this goes right now. About 12 miles an hour is maximum speed, it looks like. And that's more a factor of how it's geared. It's geared for low power, or for low, it's got a lot of torque but not a lot of speed. I could gear it higher. It's like it's in first gear right now. You know, we could gear it up. I should be able to do 20 miles an hour on here. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I may not decide to go that fast, but I like to gear it so it could if we wanted to. It's this little white dot right here. There was other things I wanted to work on today. I'm not sure how far we're going to get. It's actually not terribly hot right now. The wind helps. So it's like 11 o'clock. It took me that long to get these tested and wired and soldered and taped on and everything. So I'm going to just test this a little bit and see how it feels. I figure I don't need to go very far, but what I want to do is see in the gear that I have on pedaling now, you know, just pick one gear wherever I'm at. Could I set the throttle to a point that I could keep up with pedaling? And I think with this I can now. So that's what we're going to try out. Bump the throttle up until it starts to go, and then we'll start pedaling. That is cool. I got super slow-mo. That was ridiculous. This is so cool. Also, the brake handle works. I tested that. So just touch the brake and it disengages the throttle, and then you can reach down and switch it. I think what it's doing, it won't, like if you turned it on with the throttle on, it won't do anything. So let's try that. Switch off. That should be the throttle should be on there. So I'm going to get ready just in case it goes. Switch on. Nothing happens. I have to go back to idle, and then it'll work. Yeah, that should have worked. Cool. I'm going to grab the phone so I can check my speed. Because what I want is a starting point. I'm able to pedal pretty easily and keep up with this right now, but I want to go faster. So then what I have to figure out is how much faster would I want to go? Because I can count the ratio on the sprockets and make myself go twice as fast, for instance. Okay, that's actually a good test. I was going 5 miles an hour, 5.1, 5.2. When I stopped pedaling, coming up this little bit of a hill, it dropped down to 3. So I could see that my pedaling was doing something. And okay, there it is. GPS keeps going to sleep. Yeah, that seems like it's working. So that's kind of a good test. So in first gear, I could go 5 miles an hour. I'm used to going 10 miles an hour, so we're not quite there yet, but I could literally count the gears or count the teeth on each sprocket and then just move it to the next one that'll give me twice as fast. And I'd have that same cadence, which was feeling pretty close. So I'm going to try that again and just see how it feels. I want to get a feeling for how fast I want to pedal on here. It's different than what I'm doing on the bicycle because my position is different. But if I can find a cadence I like, then I can manually set the gears to whatever speed that is, and then I can use the throttle to fine-tune it. Yeah, that's because I was going to make the adjustment on the pedals first on the gears, and I thought, well, how fast do I want to pedal? I wasn't sure. Yeah, now we're talking. Okay, so what was going on down there, right? We'll assume that's aimed at me, more or less. That'll work. Okay. So what I was doing, on the potentiometer, I'd dial it to a point, and without pedaling, I'd find a spot that could go about 5 miles an hour, relatively level. Okay. So I'd set it for 5. And then I'm basically in what I'm going to call first gear. I was able to pedal it to 6 miles an hour fairly comfortably, and I could push it to 7 miles an hour. I had 7.4 coming up this little bit of a hill here. Okay. So I was able to take it from 5 to 7 just by pedaling, and the motor was maintaining 5 by itself without pedaling. Okay. So that's kind of where I'm on the right track there. So I think that answered the question I was trying to figure out. So what I'm looking at now is I'll figure out the Arduino side and give myself a few buttons that instead of, what I want to have is still have the throttle. Right now I don't have the throttle hooked up at all. I bypassed it. And then I'm just using the little potentiometer. And that's working fine. Once I set it, the bouncing around didn't seem to move it at all. It just, okay, turn it off so I don't accidentally run over myself. Okay, that seems like it's working. Because my biggest fear is taking this thing halfway to town and running out of battery. And I know that because this is heavier and it's got the fat tires, the motorcycle tires, it's not going to be as efficient as my 29-inch mountain bike. That's about the top of the efficiency scale. If you get the bigger wheels, 29s, that's about as efficient as you can find. The bigger the wheel, the easier it rolls, especially on gravel. So this is going to be a serious step down. So I want to make sure I can make pedaling as efficient as possible. Okay, so I've already figured out with the GPS that I can pedal 6 miles an hour. Okay, I'm used to going 10 or 12 miles an hour on the big bike. Okay, so if I double my ratio on the gears, which I've got plenty of gears, I can hit that. I looked it up. I have a spreadsheet that I made of all the gears I've got. And just on the 7-speed cassette in the back, I'm at 28. I'm on the 28 tooth sprocket right now. If I go down to the smallest, that's 14. That's 2 to 1 right there. So if I can set it up to hit that small sprocket, I should go about twice as fast. Now this bike goes about 12 miles an hour at wide open throttle. So if I can have it set at about, say, 10 miles an hour, and then if I can pedal at 10 or 11 or 12 miles an hour, that'll be pretty close to what I'm used to. I'll be a little bit faster than I was on the bike. Okay. The next step then is to start measuring how many amps I'm using from the battery. And I think what I'm thinking is I can run my amp meter with the clamp amp. Yeah, whatever. There's a clamp on feature that'll let you read amps. just through the wire without putting the, what I don't want to do is put the meter in line with the battery. I'm not sure how many amps I'm pulling, and usually those meters are good for 10 amps, and I'm not sure if the meter is set up to do 10 amps at 55 volts, 53 volts, so I don't want to mess that up. So, but I can use the clamp meter, so all I'd have to do is take a wire from the battery, come up to where I can see it, run it through the clamp meter, and go back to the motor, and then I could put that up in front of me and see it. In fact, I might do that now. That's a good way to test that. So, and that's kind of part of how I'm usually doing it anyway on the bicycle, on the other bike. I set myself a watt or an amp level that I want to run, and I know how many watt hours or amp hours the battery has. So if I can maintain a certain level, it should last me for 2 hours. So I'm trying to do it like that. If I can kind of be close to that, and then when I get back, the cycle analyst can tell me how many amp hours and watt hours I've used, and also how many watt hours per mile I used. So I come up with an average there. I don't have that on here, but when I charge the battery, it tells me how many watt hours it put back into the battery. So I can use that to start tracking how far should I be able to go on a battery. Just, figure out a spot, so, I know if I go full throttle, I'm going to go 12 miles an hour and I'm going to run out of battery pretty quickly. However, once I'm up to speed, it's like they say in your car, once you're up to speed, you don't use as much power as it took you to accelerate. This feels about the same. So if I burn a little bit of power to get up to 10 miles an hour and then it levels off and then I'm pedaling, if I can pedal at 10 miles an hour, then it won't use 750 watts. It'll use less. So that's the trick, is how much less. Okay, that's what we got to figure out. But if I can figure out, okay, if I can use 400 watts continuously, and if I could get there and back in, if I get there in an hour and back in an hour, so I can go 400 watts times 2 hours, then I can figure out how many batteries do I need, because the batteries have a watts hour rating. Okay. Then, if I can figure out that I'm able to ride continuously at 400 watts, I'm just making up these numbers right now, but it seems we're kind of in that range. I've got 200 watts of solar panels. Okay. I don't know I don't know that this thing will go very fast at 200 watts, but if it did, if I could do a continuous speed at 200 watts, and if I rode during the day when the sun is high enough to be useful, maybe I could get to town and back and still have battery left, because I'm also taking power from the solar. Okay, so that's why we're going down this road, trying to figure it out. So 1, set the throttle to a certain setting. 2, how many watts am I using? 3, how big is my battery? And 4, how many watts am I getting from solar? Because if I can use 200 watts and I got 200 watts coming in, the battery won't go dead. That's what we're looking for. This bike particularly won't go very far. I don't think I'm going to take it any further than to Sierra Blanca and back. But if the solar looks promising, I might take it to Van Horn and back. That's a 50-mile one-way trip. So I'll definitely do Van Horn before I go to El Paso. That road is mostly long and flat with one really good hill. So we'll want to have our ducks in a row when we get to that, but it's a fairly easy ride. Even the hill isn't that bad. So if I had enough gears to shift down into it, I'd be in good shape. So that's the goal. All right, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you got some useful ideas there. I've not been talking about this very much lately, but my main source of income has been these YouTube videos. The actual money I make from the ads is quite small. What actually keeps me going is a few people that are helping me out over on Patreon or YouTube members. Just a few bucks every month would sure make a huge difference. So if you get anything out of my content, there's a link down below, or I'll put it up on screen. You can help me out through Patreon, which is a monthly subscription. You can also do YouTube members, or you can just throw me a buck on PayPal once in a while. It all helps. Thank you very much. Bye for now.